our kids want to be free. Like they are, even when they're misled, there is something in their DNA that wants to be free from oppressive forces. And so illiteracy is an oppressive force because it denies you access from wisdom and knowledge and power that you may have always had in you, but you may not have had the language to communicate what it was.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited that you're joining me for Literacy Journeys with Linda. I have a wonderful guest today, Mr. Terrence Pruitt out of Chicago, Illinois. Terrence is a phenomenal educational leader, and he's going to tell us about himself. And I do have to tell you, audience, I've known Terrence since he was in high school. And at that time, he was a scholar athlete. And so, Terrence, I would like to know, what have you been doing since high school? How have you put that educational, that academic prowess to use?
So I left high school and went to the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign and got really active on campus. Helped run a Black radio station out of we call it the Black House, but it was the Bruce Nesbitt African American Cultural Center.
Sure.
I spent a great deal of time working at U of I, building my education, but also just doing activism and support, and helped found a Christian fraternity on campus, or at least that chapter of a Christian fraternity on campus, and just built a really loving, supportive ecosystem of friends and family from my experience at U of I. It gave me some great things, some great gifts, and I've just developed great friends and great comrades that I continue to do work with to this day. But one of the things that came out of that was, at the end of my time at U of I was doing community work. I was working at a program called the Juvenile Upward Mobility Program, and I also was working in the city in juvenile justice as a mentor, and actually as an officer at the juvenile justice facility in Champaign. I didn't know that I would have a career in education. I actually had set out to be a lawyer. I centered myself in wanting to have finance and be able to take care of my family. And I, from my studies and me following lawyers that I was a fan of, and that my mother had taught me about, I thought that was the best way for me to support my community and be able to support my family. But I was, called into another space to be an educator and support youth and institutions as, a leader in education.
Well, it's a good thing you heeded that call.
It is, even though I thought it was temporary. Like, I remember having conversations with my buddies, like, I'm gonna be a dean for a couple of years and get my finances together, and I'm going to law school, right? And then instead, I did get 2 masters, but I got a master's in business administration. I got my MBA, and then I got a master's in instructional design. And my buddies that were lawyers was like, you ain't coming to law school, like. So there was a pivot, and I'm glad that I did heed that call in the work we're doing. So literacy is central to the work that I continue to do, even with my business right now.
And tell us what that is. What is
my business? My business is Project Restore Initiative. I have a company that addresses structural violence by creating healing spaces for youth and community, and by also mitigating additional structural violence by training and supporting those that serve youth in the community. So we do healing spaces. I'm a racial healing practitioner, so whether that is having what's called racial healing circles, whether that's doing instruction and curriculum for youth, or instruction and curriculum for their parents and community, that's ways that we create healing spaces. Ways that we mitigate risk from structural violence is really about building the capacity of those that are in systems like the educational system, in the nonprofit system. And we do that through coaching, we do that through counseling, counseling and being a consultant, but we also do that through trainings and capacity building. And so I'm a full-time entrepreneur. I actually transitioned out of the schoolhouse in December of 2019.
Okay.
So I'm now 6 or 7 months into working for myself. And so being a startup, there are even books that I need to help me be a startup. So this is a book that I'm currently reading. You'll see my bookmark is still in it. This is The Lean Startup, right? And it's by Eric Reis, and it's about how to build your company and how to develop things that serve others It's
Yeah.
really about answering problems. And, one of the things that I'm a firm believer of, I believe that, my worth and my work should be about solving a problem and adding value to others. I'm blessed that I'm able in the middle of a pandemic to still support my community and still do my work. But it is also a growing demand for my work, and it's becoming wild. So
Absolutely.
I'm having to like build capacity with others and really branch out and develop a bench of others that can support the work, and just ask the question of who else in my community can do this thing that you're asking me to do, and giving them the opportunity to do those things as well. So yes, there is a high demand on the work that I'm doing, and so I'm trying my best to balance it and do it in a way that serves myself and my family.
Yeah. Well, Terrence, tell me about how you grew up. I know you're from East St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it in your environment, your home environment, that nurtured your academic life? Your
First, it was my mom. My mom was a teenage mother. She had me when she was 17 years old. My dad at the time was 18. And so her getting pregnant became a issue for her family, a major issue, one that jeopardized her ability to live at home. There were people that wanted her to terminate the pregnancy, and her refusal resulted in her needing to live somewhere else. And so she moved in with my father's mother and their family. And so she really wanted to make sure not only that we lived well and that we had options and that we could have a better life for ourselves, but I also think she wanted to kind of prove those people that had kind of counted us out wrong. And one of the ways she did it was she used her resources. And that wasn't a lot. She didn't have a lot of money, so she would take us to the library almost every Saturday. That's where I grew my love for music. They had records for me to listen to on a record player. That's where I would listen to Candy Girl and listen to all the records that I love. We could look at as many books as we wanted. And my mom also taught me, that's where she like birthed researching in me, because she taught us how to use microfilm. She taught us how to look things up, how to use that Dewey Decimal System. And so that's where I found new worlds, new perspectives, new ways of being, was in reading. And another way that she would support that is when I was a kid, they would have these events called Black Expos. And in my family, Black Expos felt like going to Disney World or Six Flags, because my
Wow.
mom she would save up money and she would say, hey, you can get what you want. So there would be these Black vendors that were selling books that had pictures of us, and they would sell T-shirts that had kids that looked like us on the front. I remember buying, my favorite T-shirt was a brown Mickey Mouse that I bought from a Black Expo. And so those were the things that you could get at a Black Expo, and that kind of opened my mind even more, that there were different ways of being, there was different information. I remember a book that she bought from the Black Expo when I was really young, called Designed by God, So I Must Be Special. And there's more than one version of the book. I know there's a version that has like little white stick figures on the front, but the Black Expo had the version that had the brown kids on the front, right? And so to read a kid's book that had kids that looked like you and reminded of you, it really cemented and affirmed my value. And that helped really support us and create a shield for ourselves when we were in spaces and schools and places that tried to devalue us.
Yeah. So that sounds like you had a remarkable foundation and a strong mother who knew the importance of education,
Absolutely.
training you up in the way you should go.
Indeed. Indeed. So for us, it was Bible studies, vacation Bible school, libraries, and Black Expos. Those were our favorite things.
Did you carry that into your academic experience, all that knowledge in high school?
Oh, absolutely. In high school, I think me feeling affirmed in myself and kind of seeing that perspective was a little different than some of my colleagues or some of my cohorts in high school. I think for them, sometimes it may have seemed like an arrogance, but for me, it was like a surety. It's like, I know who I am. I know who I'm called to be. And I could kind of see the world a little different than they could. And so at times that made for like great relationships and made for great learning, but other times it would make for attention, because I could kind of see things a little differently, because my mom was so instrumental in making sure that I was, reading good books. And that was a big thing for me. And I remember just getting to school was very difficult. there were no direct bus routes from East St. Louis to the school in Collinsville. And so in the mornings, I would spend about an hour and a half to 2 hours on the bus. So school started at 8:30. I had to be out of my house by like 5:45 to
Whoa.
catch like a 6 a.m. bus. But what that did for me was having to be back and forth on a bus like that. I had to read. I had to find something to read, right? So my mom would let me get books, and one of my favorite books as a child that really helped develop me was a book by Dr. Myles Munroe called Purpose by Design. And so that book kind of like opened my eyes to the fact that, you know, we all were born with a purpose. And it helped me to kind of see and develop a different perspective of the work that I was doing as a high schooler. That I didn't just see it as making it through high school or getting through this thing. I started to see this as a step towards my greater purpose. And so that's why I took it so seriously. I was like, okay, I want to make sure that I get this thing right because I see a greater purpose for myself and I don't want to have regrets. And so that was one book that really, really changed me. Another book that I later read was a book by T.D. Jakes called Maximize Your Moment. That was a book that right at the end of high school and college, I think it came, beginning of college, it came out. And so that one pushed me to do better. And then the autobiography of Malcolm X was another book that really inspired me and really pushed me to want to do better. And so that literacy that my mom gave me and that want to read books, it kind of led me through school and supported me through school. And I'm really proud and thankful that she did that for me because I continue to do that today.
That's great. You know, I was thinking about your role as the dean of discipline at that school.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you could identify with some of those young kids who I know you were kind of bored sometimes and maybe a little troublemaker when you were younger in school.
Oh no, it wasn't maybe. The reason I even the reason I met you and your daughter and your family was because I was always excelling at school, but because I was bored, I was a troublemaker. And so my mom said, all right, I need to separate you from your comfort zone and put you in a space that may make you a little uncomfortable. And that's how I came to Collinsville Christian Academy. I went from being at schools that was like 99.9%, Black babies, to a school where I was like one of 10 Black students, K through 12, right? So that was a culture shock, definitely. But I do admit that my mom making sure I was equipped and having an understanding of who I was, even if it was an immature understanding of who I was, it's what kind of protected me and kept me safe in those spaces.
Okay. So Terrence, you're on this journey, a lifelong learning journey. Your learning did not stop when you got your MBAs, your master's degrees. How do you continue to educate yourself so that you can
reading? Absolutely reading. So one book that is a life changer for me as a man is a book by Dr. James Cone. He's now one of our ancestors. He was a inspirational theologian. This book is called A Black Theology for Liberation. This book centers not only the work I do in my company, but just the way that I approach my Christianity and approach my work in the world. So that's one book that I read that helps me as a professional. Another newer book that I read is by a brilliant brother in the Bay Area, Dr. Sean Jenwright. He has a book called Hope and Healing in Urban Education. This book is foundational for the work that I do because it kind of outlines how do we create healing spaces for youth and community, and how do we support those that serve youth and community in developing the tools and skills to do so equitably. So I continue to read. Like I don't think I'm going to ever get away from the reading, even in the work that I do in supporting other youth. Definitely. Yeah, our kids want to be free. Like they are, even when they're misled, there is something in their DNA that wants to be free from oppressive forces. And so illiteracy is an oppressive force because it denies you access from wisdom and knowledge and power that you may have always had in you, but you may not have had the language to communicate what it was, right? And so our kids want to read. I think one of the problems we have as educators is we center our voice and our experiences in the things that we create for youth. And what we found was when you center youth voice and experiences, they become excited about that. So the books that were in our library were books that kids requested, right? So a kid would come and say, hey, can you get a bunch of copies of Becoming? Because me and my classmates, we want to read Becoming. So that's what we bought, right? Kid
Good
would
book.
say, hey, so that's really what it was, centering the kids in things that were familiar to them, that they like to read, that they like to talk about. It's
Also
definitely about,
emphasize writing, their
of
writing skills.
course, yeah, we have to, because that's a part of literacy, right?
Yeah.
So we have to emphasize writing and developing our writing scores and developing our writing skills, more than scores. But ultimately, that's why we want you to be literate, right? We want you to be literate not just so you can know what others know, but it's so that we can then tap into what you know, right? So that we can tap into the well of knowledge that you've built for yourself. And maybe there are things that are in you that are going untapped because you've not had the tools to be able to communicate it through writing. So reading makes you more comfortable with those tools and those skills to be able to write with clarity.
I want to ask you, Terrence, do you have a preference for how you read? Do you need a hardcover book, or do you do audios, or do you do ebooks? Does it matter to you?
All right, so I'm one of those kids who grew up loving nonfiction more than fiction. So I listen to fiction, right? I put fiction books on Audible and listen to those, right? If it is a book that is like about someone's life or about someone's experience, I can read those on Kindle, right? But if it's a book that I need to know and be able to know this book from my study or know this book from my practice, I typically will buy the audio and buy the physical, because
like your
yeah,
starter book, yeah.
yeah, because I love to be able to. I got to highlight.
Okay, okay.
So
Yep.
I highlight, and then this might sound ridiculous, but it helps me. I'll highlight, and then what I'll do is later, once I finish the book, I'll go back in that book, and anything I highlighted, I'll type up.
Wow, so powerful, powerful. I'm waiting for your book to come out, and you're probably going to be doing that. You're such a great thinker, and you have a lot to share. And I love how you're mentoring the young people around you and what you're doing for the communities, especially those that are in turmoil right now. Well, the whole world is. But I just want to thank you, and I want to encourage you. Just keep on doing what you're doing. Keep being a lifelong learner. And thank you so much, Mr. Terrence Pruitt, for joining me on Literacy Journeys with Linda.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, but I want to leave if I haven't given you an opportunity to say something to encourage somebody. Now's your chance. Is there anything else?
You were born with purpose, value, and life. Hold on to it for dear life. That's it. And whatever mechanism, whatever methods you have to do to be well and to be whole, place your time and your strength in those things. Reading is one of those methods, but meditation is another. Spending time with family is another. Praying is another. And so you need to just hold on to that value, that light, and that purpose for dear life.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me on Literacy Journeys with Linda. If you enjoyed this interview, please check the subscribe button so that you won't miss any interview that I'm going to do with all these fabulous people who are talking about the importance of literacy in their lives. So thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you, Mr. Terrence Pruitt, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.